Hey guys, I just wanted to touch base with you today and talk to you about some different protists and show you some videos of them. Remember, protists are single-celled eukaryotic things, so they have a nucleus just like you do, and they're pretty big cells compared to like bacteria. So again, they're really different than bacteria. They have a nucleus, bacteria do not. They're much larger. Bacteria are very small. And then the other thing is that they have actual organelles like you do. You can see here that they have like a contractile vacuole for food. They have their nucleus. They have food vacuoles, lysosomes, things like that. Chloroplasts. So these are all things that we learned about earlier in the year. And protists have those. So they're kind of like a single-celled version of bigger things. And remember that they can be, from yesterday, that they can be like fungus-like, so like a mushroom. They can be animal-like, and they can also be plant-like. Today I'm going to focus on more of these animals and plant-like ones. Mostly the animal-like ones. They're pretty cool to look at. Tomorrow maybe we'll look at some of the fungal-like ones, and those are pretty cool too. Plant ones, definitely most of them just kind of chill and sit around and get food from the sun and grow and are green. They're kind of like plants, but Volebox in particular I really enjoy, and I'll show you some of that. And then maybe also some Euglena as well. So this is kind of videos, and I'll walk you through some of these different types. First one I want to show you is this one here. This is called a Paramecium, and Paramecium are an animal-like protist. They have cilia. You can see them kind of wiggling them around the outside of their cell membrane. It's kind of that flashing that you see, and they swim through water with those cilia, little tiny hairs. And these are pretty big protists. They move around and they're predatory, so they will eat much smaller protists as well. Are an algae. These are Volvox. They are, I kind of liken them to green beach balls that kind of bumble around, and they're quite impressive. They actually are a colony, so there's a whole lot of little cells, and they form a ball of sorts, and each one of the little cells has a tiny little flagella on it, and they all wiggle their flagella, and so these things just randomly like cruise around in kind of weird motions. No organizing kind of like structure to tell them where to go. They just all individually like wiggle their tails, and the ball kind of bumbles around in different directions because of that. But it is an algae. These things grab sunlight and they do photosynthesis like plants do, releasing oxygen into the atmosphere for you to breathe. And in the meantime, they make sugar, and they are kind of the base of the food chain. So a lot of smaller animal-like things eat these. The next one I'm going to show you is actually another type of algae, but this one is also animal-like. So this is one of those crazy ones that can eat and it can do photosynthesis. This is called Euglena, and they have one flagella. You can actually see it right there. There's kind of little tail sticking off, and they can wiggle that tail around and they can move around to find food. But you'll see that they also have these little chloroplasts inside of their cell membranes, and they can do photosynthesis with that. So these guys are like an animal, but also like a plant. They can head up to the surface of the water and do photosynthesis, and at the same time they could wiggle around and also look around and find food. And you're looking at all the motion here. They kind of just their cells can sense light, and they can move towards it and they can move away from it, but they move with one flagella. And so you'll see them sometimes they kind of look like they spin around too, but remember, a flagella is a whip-like appendage. All right, this is also one of my kind of more favorite animals. I'll rewind it. This is called a Rotofur. This is an animal-like protist, and you'll notice that they are just kind of crazy underneath the microscope as well. They kind of blob around. You see their insides here, and they have these like mouth-like things that suck in stuff. So just a really, really cool microscopic little critter. And you can see that they grab things in the water column and eat it. So really kind of neat. Another one I have is Stentor, and Stentor has that similar type of mouth part, and it's going to cruise around, and all these little cilia will kind of suck in smaller photosynthetic protist into its kind of big cellular gut, and that's how it feeds. It's just a crazy looking protist, and again, another animal-like one. So the neat thing about all these critters that I've just showed you is that they move, they're active. I would love to be in the classroom today because Mr. Olson and I usually just go to a pond or a nearby creek and take some water samples, and I have you look at them and they look totally clear. There might be some like green algae in it, but it looks like regular clear water. And then I have you take a little drop of that water, and I would have had you put it underneath a microscope, and then you would have seen all these crazy things. I'd ask you to identify them and stuff. But it's just super exciting to look at nothing but clear water and then see these amazing creatures. Just a really, really kind of neat activity to do. And that's when I wish I was in school. I mean, I can definitely show you videos on YouTube, but it's totally different than you exploring and finding these things by yourself. So, there's a ton of cool things to look at. Here's another amoeba one eating. It's neat that there's so many things on YouTube for you to see. But unfortunately, I just wish we could do it in real life. This virus is kind of putting a damper on all that. So if you want to head back to your notes real quick, let's fill out some things on the last slide in your notes for the animal-like protists. And then we'll do some of the other ones tomorrow, okay? So I'm on the last slide of our notes, and I'd like you to kind of fill this area out too. Last time we did it on a Jamboard. This one I'll have you just follow along and do some stuff with me. So animal-like protists, they have some traits that are like animals. First of all, they eat things. So they are consumers. The other word for that is heterotroph. Heterotroph, if you remember our root words that we used to have in the classroom. Hetero means other, and troph means feeder. So heterotroph means an other feeder, and that's definitely what animals like you and I are. We eat other things. We eat vegetables, we eat plants, we also eat other animals. If you are a, omnivore kind of meat eater person. So animal-like protists eat others, and they also do one very important thing that makes them animal-like. These things move, and how they move differs. So let's add the way that these things move around. So they can move around with a pseudopod, and that's PS, pseudopoda. Now pod means foot, or poda means foot. So these things move around with pseudopods. Pseudo means fake, so it means fake feet. And this is the amoeba where they take their insides and they push it into an appendage or a limb, and all of their insides just kind of move into there, and they essentially move where that is. And you saw that on that amoeba video. They can also move with cilia, and cilia, just like in bacteria, those little tiny hairs that surround the whole cell, and they can wiggle those little tiny hairs and move through the environment. And you can see those here on this model of a paramecium. And you can also see the pseudopod here on this diagram of an amoeba, okay? And then the last way that they can move around is called a flagella. And this is a whip-like tail, right? Whip-like tail. And let's just write all these things. So cilia are tiny hairs. And the pseudopods mean fake feet or fake appendages, fake limbs, okay? So those are the things that animal-like protists have in common. They all move around in some sort of way, and they all eat stuff, and that's what makes them an animal. It's a little bit different than the slime molds, which we'll talk about probably a little bit more tomorrow, and I'll also add the notes on the plant-like algae, the producing-like protists. So today, if you could add those notes in, they are super important. I will have a little quiz on protists. We won't really have a test, but hopefully you watched the video yesterday. That gave you a little background. If you watch this today, you got a little background as well. And then we'll keep going again on Wednesday. And you could probably expect a quiz kind of, Thursday or Friday at the end of the week, just on protists. And then we're going to move on, and we'll start talking about the human body and how that compares to other animals that are out there, some larger animals. And then after that, we get into ecology. So have a good rest of the day.